Hello everybody, I am Journey, and I live in the US. It's also currently the 4th of July and I'm at my grandparents' house, so if you hear noises, that's why. You may or may not be wondering, why am I making this video when everyone else is lighting fireworks? Well, on top of the sensory issues, there's a whole lot of crazy stuff going on in the US right now. I want to try and do my part, but I'm kind of useless because I react like a distressed turtle when I'm in a crowd and have the reaction time of a sloth. So I've decided to make this video. My goal is to teach you how to look out for propaganda, scams, and basically anybody who benefits from making your life worse while promising that they will totally fix it. If for some reason you clicked on this video and you don't know anything about Half-Life but want to watch anyway to learn the stuff that I just mentioned, don't worry. I'll be explaining Half-Life lore whenever it's relevant. Like, for example, right now. What's going on? Well, after a war that only lasted 7 hours, humanity surrendered to an interdimensional empire called the Combine. And to say they aren't nice is an understatement. Throughout Half-Life 2, the former CEO of the corporation responsible for this entire mess, now the administrator of Earth, Dr. Wallace Breen, can be heard talking in several areas, spouting all sorts of propaganda.
In our current unparalleled enterprise, refusal to collaborate is simply refusal to grow, an insistence on suicide, if you will.
Most people are probably like, I wouldn't fall for this nonsense, but I think you would, and I'm going to show you why. I'm not an expert. I consider myself pretty good at spotting shady stuff and reading between the lines, but I don't have a license, I didn't go to college or anything. And spoilers for Entropy 0, 1, 2, and Uprising mods, because they provide excellent visuals and examples for what I'm talking about. This is Journey from the future, and I would like to add a couple more warnings. 1. Half-Life 2 is a dystopia. That means everything sucks. If you're looking for something fun and relaxing, well, I try to be occasionally funny, and also now that I'm writing this, I might insert some cat breaks, but this video is far from lighthearted. Also, this is a video about propaganda, and I will be covering how propaganda in Half-Life 2 is similar to stuff from the real world. So if you're looking for escapism, yeah, you've made the wrong turn. I'll get into the details about how I drew this conclusion throughout the video, but for the sake of a warning, the propaganda that Breen uses is designed to convince humanity to stop fighting for their rights. It's designed to convince humans that they are a lesser species. If things like that are seriously upsetting for you, you should probably click away. I also won't be analyzing Breen as a character in this video, so if that's what you came here for, I suggest you look elsewhere. But in the description, I will link a Tumblr post I made where someone responded to a debate request of mine and gave some pretty interesting insight. When I first started writing this video, I could tell I was being a little unfair to Breen, but I couldn't think of any other way to look at him. And that was a problem because a big part of this video is trying to get into Breen's head and figuring out why he chooses the words that he does. I've come to the conclusion that Dr. Breen is absolutely being manipulative 90% of the time, but that he's promoting this propaganda to achieve what he believes is the lesser of two evils, and I'll be talking about people like that. While I'll be going over tactics that apply to the real world, I also think that by understanding the people of the Half-Life universe, you'll be able to understand when you or the people around you are in a similar spot and know when someone is taking advantage of your vulnerabilities, like lack of education, finances, people you care about, biases, and so on. So, what is going on with the humans of the Half-Life universe? The humans of Half-Life are in pretty bleak circumstances. As I mentioned, Earth surrendered to the Combine after a war that lasted only 7 hours. That's how powerful the Combine are, so a lot of people are probably thinking, what do we even do against something like that? On top of that, the water may or may not be poisoned. There's radioactive waste just around. The Combine keep track of how many people are at a certain area, and any suspicion of someone who doesn't belong, or someone who is missing, is met with violence. It's implied that humans don't get access to as much food anymore, as the Overwatch, an omnipresent voice that gives out orders, promises extra food for good behavior. It's also implied they don't even have access to fresh food, not even vegetables.
Attention residents, miscount detected in your block. Cooperation with your civil protection. Permit for ration reward.
Those who resist the Combine become mutilated, mindless drones who work for them. In short, there is seemingly no hope. When explaining what a club sandwich is, Russell explains what animal each type of meat came from, implying these animals don't exist anymore. Rather, they aren't very common or are controlled exclusively by the Combine. The only domestic Earthling depicted in Half-Life, as far as I know, is a cat. If they did go extinct, I find it incredibly hard to believe that humans, who have driven many animals to extinction in many parts of the world to protect livestock, would allow those animals to go extinct. This leads me to believe that the Combine are responsible for the extinction of domestic animals to make humans more vulnerable. If you're skeptical that anyone would go that far just to get rid of a population of people, I'd like you to know that this is something that American colonizers actually did. Even if the Combine were to leave, humans would struggle to find food. There are still some Terran animals left, but hunt enough crows and they won't fly anywhere near humans. They're too smart for that. I hope you could tell that I was exaggerating the concern in my voice. I'm not very good at voice acting. You'll also hear Breen frequently mention how the Combine can take humans to other worlds. To the stars, to be specific. This isn't entirely true. The entire Half-Life series starts with humans figuring out how to teleport to another world. And even in real life, we've already landed on the moon. The only way this propaganda would work is if the Combine destroyed sources of information on Black Mesa, Aperture, and space exploration, and not confirmed that the moon landing was fake. Confirmed in quotes. This would make humans believe that the Combine are superior and their only means of traveling beyond Earth. I actually have some in-game evidence that corroborates this, at least hints that something like this happened. There's some propaganda forces in Half-Life Alyx that essentially say that human science in particular is dangerous. I wouldn't be surprised if all sources of information not approved by the Combine have been destroyed, as that would make it incredibly hard for humans to develop weaponry against them, and know when Dr. Breen's arguments make no sense. So on top of making themselves appear vastly more powerful, the Combine have possibly managed to make humans believe they are dependent on them. With that out of the way, on to the first Breencast. In this speech, Breen calmly welcomes people to City 17.
Welcome. Welcome to City 17. You have chosen or been chosen to relocate to one of our finest remaining urban centers. I thought so much of City 17 that I elected to establish my administration here, in the citadel so thoughtfully provided by our benefactors. I've been proud to call City 17 my home. And so, whether you are here to stay or passing through on your way to parts unknown, welcome to City 17. It's safer here.
It's obvious just being here that no one is happy to be in City 17. There's trash on the ground, the water is either laced with drugs, or this place is so hostile that this man is too paranoid to drink water. So why do Breen and the Combine even bother with this, you may ask? Because someone might fall for it. And the more people who fall for it, less people will fight back against the Combine. He might also genuinely believe what he's saying, or trying to help the people of City 17 feel better about their situation. Now, here's how people fall for it. Breen uses doublespeak to try to calm down the newcomers of City 17. Doublespeak is a term used for language that hides its true meaning, or distorts its meaning. One example would be the term unalive in place of kill or dead. Judging by how miserable they are, I doubt many of the people of City 17 actually had much of a choice. They were either dragged there by civil protection or went there themselves because they had nowhere else to go. Then chosen to relocate, aka kidnapped, or forced to go to City 17 by a Combine authority of some kind.
You happy? You happy? Hold on,
Everyone knows that kidnapping is awful, so people use a different word, one with less hard-hitting, and in this case, even positive meanings. People who are too tired or uneducated to pick up on what you're really saying will remain calm or maybe even agree with you if you use the right words. It's very similar to another propaganda technique called loaded language. I'm not an expert, but I think the difference is loaded language is the use of words with positive and negative connotations when neutral words exist. But doublespeak is fully deceptive. There is no positive synonym, for example, so Breen uses chosen instead, which, while loaded language, is also deceptive. I could be wrong about this though, the internet wasn't very helpful with this. I bring this up because I think loaded language is what Breen uses when talking about City 17 itself. He phrases the Combine choosing to have the Citadel and City 17 as though they were giving a gift, by using the same language one uses when talking about, well, giving a gift to someone. Thoughtfully provided instead of just using built or placed. The phrase our benefactors itself possibly counts as this, using our benefactors instead of just the Combine to make people feel a connection with the Combine. Our benefactors like our parents or our friends. Our is a word typically used when you either possess something, are connected to something, or belong to something, usually in the sense of community or family. And the word benefactors is used here as a positive replacement for dictators. Now, here are some of these tactics being used in the real world. Warnings for racism, violence, guns, and kidnapping of the official kind.
ISIS since said the man was detained for interfering with an operation. You'll remember Pete Hegseth was asked by members of Congress yesterday if this was happening extensively. So let's get to CBS News correspondent Nydia Cavazos reporting from our Los Angeles bureau. Nydia, a U.S. citizen detained. That really speaks to what Pete Hegseth was asked about in Congress there. What do you know about that?
Reid, federal officials here in LA continue to emphasize that anyone who tries to interfere with any ongoing operation or enforcement activity will be detained regardless of their immigration status, as is the case with this 20-year-old who happens to be a U.S. citizen and who happened to be in the parking lot while federal agents arrived to conduct an immigration enforcement activity. Now, officials and the
Re-recording this bit because I sound freaking awful in the initial version that I did. So yeah, I mean, the audio is bad in all of this. I don't know why my videos always consistently have, like, my videos are always so consistently quiet. I don't know if it's that I'm talking too quietly or if something else is going on. I'm going to keep trying to fix that. I'm really sorry. Anyway, here's the next Breencast, in which Breen chooses not to respond to someone asking if the Combine will ever remove the suppression field preventing humanity from reproducing. This is very long, so I'm going to cover it in parts.
Let me read a letter I recently received. Dear Dr. Breen, why has the Combine seen fit to suppress our reproductive cycle? Sincerely, a concerned citizen. Thank you for writing. Concerned. Of course, your question touches on one of the basic biological impulses, with all its associated hopes and fears for the future of the species. I also detect some unspoken questions. Do our benefactors really know what's best for us? What gives them the right to make this kind of decision for mankind? Will they ever deactivate the suppression field and let us breed again? Allow me to address the anxieties underlying your concerns, rather than try to answer every possible question you might have left unvoiced. First, let us consider the fact that for the first time ever, as a species, immortality is in our reach.
In order to get to tearing down Breen's lies here, we're going to need to go over some quick Half-Life lore. The Combine had promised humanity immortality. How? Transhumanism. Transhumanism, in case you don't know, is an ideology around using technology and genetics to make humanity better, and overcome supposed biological limitations. You know how deaf people sometimes have hearing aids? Transhumanism says everyone should get hearing aids, and instead of helping you hear normally, you get the hearing of a bat. Now apply that to every part of the body. you may be thinking, wow, immortality sounds great, or I want to have the hearing of a bat. But in the world of Half-Life, signing up to the Combine's brand of transhumanism comes with some major cost. I want to quickly say that I'd argue that what the Combine does is the opposite of transhumanism, using their technology to actively impair people. But transhumanism is the word that they use to hide the horrific reality. With that out of the way, here is what happens when someone agrees to join the Combine's transhuman forces.
Accepted. Updating cognitive suppression by events. Update complete in T-3 seconds. Dissonance resolved. Overwatch is requesting all units refresh and resolve. Cognitive dissonance will not be tolerated. Negative. Memories included. Update is live. Acceptance is mandatory.
Their minds aren't their own anymore. They also get so modified to the point that they can't afford to live without the Combine. The soldiers, despite being loyal to the Combine, are also frequently threatened with if they fail at a task. We don't know for sure if that's a euphemism or not. So even with all of the great modifications and supposed immortality, transforming, as Breen calls it, is absolutely not worth it. You're completely enslaved and threatened to either be killed or kicked out of your homeworld.
So, what's the deal with this place?
With all of that out of the way, we can now move on to how it's shady in two different ways that Breen mentions immortality instead of answering the question. First, I think the only time where avoiding a question is not a red flag is if it's personal or if it's almost your birthday. Even an answer like, "I'll get back to you about that later," is better than this non-answer, especially if they go about it in this very roundabout way, because to me this demonstrates that they're trying to make you forget that you even asked a question in the first place. Because, and this is the second reason, they're probably trying to sell you something, and they don't want you to figure out its complete and utter bull. Which is immortality in this case. The Combine soldiers gradually lose everything that made them who they were, which is more like death than immortality. Oh, and did you know that preventing a group of people from reproducing is literally genocide?
This simple fact has far-reaching implications. It requires radical rethinking and revision of our genetic imperatives. It also requires planning and forethought that run in direct opposition to our neural presets. I find it helpful at times like these to remind myself that our true enemy is instinct. Instinct was our mother when we were an infant species. Instinct coddled us and kept us safe in those hard-scrabble years when we hardened our sticks, cooked our first meals above a meager fire, and started at the shadows that leapt upon the cavern's walls. But inseparable from instinct is its dark twin, superstition. Instinct is inextricably bound to unreasoning impulses, and today we clearly see its true nature. Instinct has just become aware of its irrelevance, and like a cornered beast, it will not go down without a bloody fight. Instinct would inflict a fatal injury on our species. Instinct creates its own oppressors and bids us rise up against them. Instinct tells us that the unknown is a threat rather than an opportunity. Instinct slyly and covertly compels us away from change and progress. Instinct, therefore, must be expunged. It must be fought tooth and nail, beginning with the basest of human urges, the urge to reproduce.
First off, neural presets, biological impulse. As far as I could tell, and I even asked my therapist, none of these are actual concepts in any field of science. I could be wrong though. If I am, please let me know. And an instinct is a complicated behavior that an organism is capable of doing without learning or thinking about. For example, baby sea turtles moving towards the ocean, or baby marsupials moving towards mother's pouch. Examples of instincts in humans are breathing, laughing, and blinking. Instinct cannot make you fear the unknown, or make you vote for a dictator, or do any of the things that Breen blames it for. I don't think Breen is being stupid though. He is talking about something here that everyone understands and has experienced, but he's disguised it for the same reason he calls being kidnapped being chosen, to prevent people from being outraged. What he's talking about is fear. Fear is like a primitive version of logic. It's what drives creatures to avoid things that could hurt them. Humans don't like being associated with primitiveness. Humans don't like being compared to animals. They look down on them. But they know fear is sometimes justified. After all, "I don't know if that was brave or stupid" is a very common saying in English. So instead, Breen talks about instinct, which has this reputation of being primitive, and primitiveness has a reputation of being inferior to humans. He also mentions superstition, which has some negative connotations because superstitious people, at least in America, the country that Breen is from, are known to kill innocent black cats and say things like, "Pokemon was made by the devil." Anyway, so Breen says instinct instead of fear to trick people into ignoring their fear by subtly telling them they aren't afraid of the Combine, they're just being stupid animals, and that it's time to transcend nature. Fear is involved in an instinct though. I'll give Breen that much. What instinct is fear connected to, you may ask? Self-preservation instinct. And that's what this entire Breencast is, isn't it? Convincing humanity to let itself die. And he does this by going on about how humanity could achieve immortality and go to space. All they have to do is accept the cybernetic enhancements. Just ignore the fear, banding against your ribcage, screaming about how such a fate is indistinguishable from death, perhaps even worse than it. Then he finally addresses the question. Remember the question that was asked at the beginning of this? Yeah, so Breen does in fact answer it.
Urge to reproduce. We should thank our benefactors for giving us respite from this overpowering force. They have thrown a switch and exorcised our demons in a single stroke. They have given us the strength we never could have summoned to overcome this compulsion. They have given us purpose. They have turned our eyes toward the stars. Let me assure you that the suppressing field will be shut off on the day that we have mastered ourselves, the day we can prove we no longer need it. And that day of transformation, I have it on good authority, is close at hand.
Humans will be born again, but only once they become part of the Combine, become mindless cyborgs. And maybe that's true. Perhaps allowing humans to reproduce normally is easier than growing them artificially in some way. I mean, the soldiers gotta have armor around their crotch for some reason. But babies would then be born for the sole purpose of growing up to be turned into near mindless cyborgs. That was a lot. Let's recap. Breen rambled at the beginning about barely anything besides mentioning the one thing humanity has to gain from the Combine. Then he went off on an unrelated tangent. In that tangent, he said some fancy words to sound smart, then made a speech about how you should give up a fundamental component of how you work because it's actually harming you. He made the thing in question sound bestial in nature and pursuing it as dangerous and foolish. Anyway, I have this moment from NBC News that reminded me of this Breencast. Warning for queerphobia.
Have you been to drag shows?
Have not. But I've seen videos. I've seen videos of drag. Well, and I guess I should say, have I been to places where a man was dressed as a woman and performing or singing? Maybe they were dressed, it was a Halloween party and they were dressed up as Dolly Parton? Of course I have.
Are you trying to send a signal?
Of course
that
not.
Some types of communities, some types of people aren't welcome here in Tennessee?
The only signal I'm trying to send is that you shouldn't be doing sexually graphic, you shouldn't be simulating sex acts in front of children.
Who's going to decide what's sexually explicit, what's inappropriate? I've looked through the language of the bill, and it's not clear at all who's going to make that determination.
Well, the same way any law is enforced, with our law enforcement, our district attorneys.
That was a lot. Remember how I mentioned I was thinking of doing cat breaks? Here's my favorite picture of my late cat, Kitty. This was taken by my mom either before or after arriving at or leaving the vet. I don't remember the specifics, but this was sometime around the time that I took her to the vet. She probably isn't intentionally appearing grumpy on account of being a cat, but that doesn't change the fact that she does look insanely grumpy and was probably pretty upset. It fits the situation. She ate a small ball of epoxy clay. That is insanely toxic. According to the vet, cats sometimes eat random stuff when they're in pain, and I think she was past a kidney stone at the time. Somehow the epoxy didn't kill her because her separation anxiety was that bad, and she continued to live for 2 more years. She ended up living for 16 years in total. She was the most annoying creature I knew, next to myself. Okay, Journey from the future here once again. My editing program is just not coping well with the amount of stuff going into the video, apparently. So I'm going to have to split this video into 2 parts. So, I'll see you in the next one.